it's important to do due diligence. And we would always ask that, even if it comes to the point where people come to us with a deal, we say, well, we may not be dealing with yourself, Judy, who we know is going to be thorough. We may be dealing with someone else. So we always ask the question, have you done the due diligence example? Whichever side of the transaction, especially the buyer's side, because you're coming in the unknown and there could be skeletons in the closet, not just looking at the business overall, but looking at the financial history of it and where the profit and loss position is, what the trading figures look like. Like, are you buying a business or are you buying a problem? That's the number one question I always think of with a business is this going to be a problem or are you going to make money out of it or make money out of it eventually? Like, if you're not making money out of it, maybe you're buying a hobby. If it's all well and good, if that's what you want to buy, but if you want to make money, you need to do your due diligence.
Okay, Michael, I have a very good question for you. It's
Yes.
not a very easy to answer question. For example, you acting on behalf of the landlord, and I act on behalf of the vendor and helping the buyer to um, purchase the transition. Okay, on the settlement day, the landlord instructs you to refuse to sign the transfer of lease by asking my vendor 20% of the contract price of the business. So what you gonna do for this case?
Well, if I'm acting for the landlord, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, but it's not ethical.
Well, it's not ethical, of course. It could give rise to all sorts of issues. So if you think about leases, leases often have clauses around consenting to transfer of leases. And the most common clause, these are general clauses, they don't really change. If it was a retail lease, for example, it would be very standard. It might be one of the REIV or LIV standard leases, but there's always generally a clause that says that they must not unreasonably withhold consent. So there's a risk that the landlord could be in breach of the lease if they're unreasonably withholding consent. But the reality is, I'm helping the landlord, so I'm helping the naughty person here, who's misbehaving, but it shouldn't get to the point of even signing the contract. Realistically, it shouldn't even get to settlement date without having had that all lined up. Now, what your situation is, maybe they have consented and then they just try to
Yes,
take
they did.
advantage of the situation at the final hour. And really what you could probably do is, if the buyers and vendors perspective is, it's the landlord that's getting in the way of the deal. So the buyer and vendor could really just consent to extend the settlement date. This is usually what we do when we encounter issues at the final hour, is the buyer and vendor work together because they don't want the deal to fall over because someone else is misbehaving. Extend the settlement date and then work out and get legal advice about how to deal with the landlord. Now, I can't give advice because I'm acting for the naughty landlord, aren't I? But that could give rise to a whole series of different potential causes of action. It's completely exploitive. And as I said, it could be a breach of the lease. So if it's a retail lease, it may have to go to VCAT, may go to the Victorian Small Business Commissioner for a mediation, although there's delays there. So yeah, it's really requires an analysis of the facts of the case and involved, and to work out what exactly the landlord has said and what they're doing may give rise to other causes of action as well. But that, in a nutshell, would be how I would usually handle that situation. And perhaps the vendor or the person trying to sign the lease might have to take the landlord to VCAT.
Mm.
And if they're found to have breached the lease, then obviously that gives rise to things like loss and damage. Loss and damage potentially is the associated costs and expenses or default penalties associated with the extended settlement date or missed opportunity,
Yeah.
or maybe the buyer pulling out. It's a very risky position for a landlord to take. Most of the time, landlords won't do that. They're properly advised
Mm.
because it could expose them.